Welcome back. Let's talk about nullish coalescing operator, and it's this double question mark. So remember, we learned about the big int, and we also learned about the optional chaining with the question mark and the period, just like this. So what's this double question mark? And this double question mark can often be used instead of what we've seen before, the OR operator. So let me show you what I mean. Let's imagine that we have a new property here, and we'll call it power. And power for Pikachu is lightning. Now, if I wanted to get the power of my Pokemon, then I can simply do this and grab the power or the property power lightning. But let's say we weren't sure that we have this property for the Pokemon. So we can't really do question mark period because, well, that doesn't really make sense. Remember, the optional chaining operator works on objects and checking their properties, but power is the end of the chain. We can't really do anything. So most of the time what we would do is do an OR operator. So if, let's say, Pikachu doesn't have a power, we can just say no power. So let's imagine here that we have an empty string, or maybe not even the property. And if I copy this over and run this, I get no power. That makes sense, right? But what if we had power in here, but it's an empty string? What would happen then? Well, if I run this again, I get no power again. And that is because this OR operator works by checking if this is truthy. If it's not truthy, then it resorts to no power. That's how JavaScript works. So this empty string evaluates as false, and I get no power. What if the power was false? Once again, this will resort to false, and you'll get no power. But what if we wanted this to be an empty string instead of no power? We want to check if this is null or undefined. Only then do we want to give no power. Otherwise, maybe this Pikachu just is still evolving and doesn't have any power, but we don't necessarily want to say no power. Well, in that case, we can do the nullish coalescing. And this, instead of the OR operator, doesn't check if a value is falsy. Instead, it checks if it's null or undefined. So things like 0, for example, if we do that, well, let's find out. If I copy this, I get power of 0. If this was an OR, in that case, the result would be different. The result would be no power, even though we actually have a value. So again, nullish coalescing is really useful for those occasions that you might use the OR operator. Pretty cool. All right, I think that's enough. There's a few more to cover with ES2020, but again, we're gonna encounter those throughout the rest of the sections because they require a bit of other knowledge that we're gonna accumulate. So let's take a break and I'll see you in the next one.